Bad guys will try anything to get between you and your money and your information, and that includes targeting your devices. So how can you protect yourself? Well, stay tuned to find out. Welcome to the Carrie Kursky Show, your partner in the fight against identity theft, fraud, and cyber threats. I'm your host, Carrie Kursky. Welcome to the show. Today I have a special guest, Dennis DiGiacomo from MDP Studios, and he's going to share with us some information about how you can protect your devices. So welcome, Dennis, to the show.
Thanks, Carrie. I appreciate that.
So Dennis, why don't you tell everybody about what is it that you do? What's your day job?
Day job. Well, I do everything in IT. So I'm an Apple specialist. I've been professional with Apple Computer for over 36 years. So started from the very beginning till now. Same thing with Microsoft. And there's nothing we can't do. It's audio, video, it's cars, it's home appliances, it's security cameras, it's GPS, it's everything. It's unfortunately everything is in the technology field today, and it's all related. And unfortunately, there's a lot of issues with that.
So let's talk about, because of the nature of your job and what you see on a daily basis, what are some of the trends that you're seeing that are impacting people?
Well, for some reason, most people have let their guards down in the last several years, and it's just getting worse. And you've mentioned it several times in the past on previous podcasts and your outreach speaking you do for so many folks and on many shows around the country. The problem we're still seeing is the same things. People are receiving a text saying it's from Apple that, you need to click here or follow these prompts to do something. And they get an email that says the same thing. They'll be surfing the web, reading a news article. They may be looking at Facebook and checking out their family's vacation, and a pop-up says, hey, something happened to your computer. Call this 800 number. And it may be audio warning, it may be visual, maybe both. And then the phone rings, and people are now answering the phone and actually believing the person on the other end of the line. And what happens, as we see time and time again, people are gaining entry in these people's devices and into their networks. And then what we see as a result is identity theft and fraud and major computer problems.
Let's talk about, because I know people don't give much thought into the age or the type of device that they're using. So are there risks with using some of these older devices, like an old iPhone or an old computer or operating system? Are there risks involved?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, the old days, we'd have one computer and you'd have it for, 5-6 years, maybe longer, because they were expensive. And technology was ever so gradually changing. And even when a change came out for the next new model, you really didn't have to upgrade because it really wasn't being pushed hard enough. Right now, there's a goal with artificial intelligence is to be ahead of the game. And every single year, iPhones come out with new models, Androids come out with new models, Apple computer, Windows computers. They're all competing and vying for space to have the best, latest, and greatest cameras, the best operating systems, and then of course connect everything from making your lights turn on and off in your home to starting your car remotely. It's great. The problem is older devices are also like that old dog you forgot about that's left out on the porch overnight because he's just old and slow, fell asleep under the seat, and you forgot to bring him back in the house because he's not barking at you like a puppy would be up your butt. So unfortunately, older devices like an iPhone 6 are great devices, but Apple started a trend where even after a certain operating system update, it actually destroyed the battery life. And Apple got involved with a class action suit over this. And of course, they fixed people's batteries. And some of these people still have the iPhone 6. I just dealt with a client yesterday. They're fine phones. One thing about Apple, they give you a 5 to 7 year lifespan of their products. They usually get more than that. They're worth the money. The problem is we don't like to part with the old shoe that we're comfortable with. And because of that, it's the flip phone, it's the push button on the iPhone we like. It's just a simple and ease of every day that we're comfortable with. The moment we see that new device was swiping here, swiping there, didn't realize you have to use your face to unlock it or how that even all works, people are intimidated, so they don't want to upgrade, and they don't. That's the same for a lot of things, not just the devices, but it's even the software. And the reason why you need to upgrade these things is because of security and safety. Every day, the internet security changes on web pages, as well as the software that goes into making a web page. All the same goes in the transmission of all our technology, whether it's over a phone line, over a satellite, over the internet. There's patches, there's updates, and people say, I hate doing updates, they break my phone. Sometimes they do. And sometimes I tell most people when the updates do occur on average, whether it's Microsoft or Apple or Google or Android, pause, take some time. Don't be the early adopter of the update. Yeah, they may be necessary and important, Unless you're actually having a major problem, which an update did, then you can apply the next update immediately because that usually will remedy it. Otherwise, just wait a little bit. I say give it a week, give it 2 weeks, let other people go through the headaches, then do the updates. Usually they're free and clear at that point and do a much better job. But a lot of people don't do the updates and they're afraid to because they don't want to change what the status quo is on their device. But what's going to happen is they'll find out that they won't be able to do their routine banking. They won't be able to log into their investment accounts. They won't be able to even send a safe email, or a lot of these apps nowadays like Facebook and Instagram, and I'm sure you've mentioned these, they actually, when you agree to use the app in your device or your computer, they actually get more rights and freedoms throughout your machine, like gaining access to your contacts, your pictures, your notes, your calendars, and maybe even files. And people don't realize that they've given this kind of information away for free. But as I tell most people, Facebook just didn't come out there and let you put your whole life bio into a website for free. You gave them something, and you gave them your identity. And the problem is they know you before you get there because of all your friends who got pictures from you and other things they posted to the time you show up, and they're happy to see you. It is intriguing. It's really a cool piece of technology. I think Facebook is neat. The problem is it's very dangerous. It's not a great place to play. As you've mentioned several times, even when people do those surveys, they actually are fishing for key questions to security answers for security questions. So I do know that I learn a lot from you every day, Carrie. So you are definitely a godsend. But it's people just fall for these common pitfalls every day and don't realize they're being sucked into it. I do think it's important to update your Apple device. So if you got an iPhone, anything before an iPhone 8, I think you need to go to get a new iPhone. And when you do buy one, don't buy the iPhone 10 or 11 because they're cheaper. Buy the iPhone 12. Buy the current model, because the current model by the end of this year is already dead because they're already focusing on the next model. So stay as most current as you can. I know it's kind of hard because all this stuff does cost money, but your identity is worth it. And what it costs to get it fixed or where it ends up, a lot of people can't have that happen. And so and Apple does give you a lot of safety and security with their products, sometimes too much, but I think it's important to do that. The Android devices are a little different. You know, they're on a more of an open platform that even the applications you can download can cause virus issues in an Android phone. So they can get spyware and viruses in the phone, which can take them down. I always advocate for Apple because they do have a really good ecosystem, and they have their problems like everybody else, but not as bad. At least if you have an Android product or if you have an old Windows device, you do need to have antivirus and anti-spyware and security. The problem is now anything less than Windows 10 is not safe. As you know, they stopped supporting Windows 7. It's no longer here. Windows 8 and 8.1 came afterward as they ventured into 10. And now 10's been recently updated as of November, even to a whole nother version. It's doing really well, but they do have a lot of holes. And to me, my opinion is Windows 10 is still Windows 1995 under the hood, just with some pretty overlays. It has gotten better, but I do know that Microsoft even announced that they're going to make a change into moving into more Unix, Linux-based system like Apple did, 20 years ago. So Microsoft is going to come forward, and I think they're going to be viable. But Google's also working on the Android platform, where you may even see it as an option one of these days on a PC computer. But you do have to do these updates, more so on Microsoft because the viruses and spyware and the ransomware do run rampant. A lot of people think because they have a firewall turned on or because they're using a VPN, and I know you mentioned those often with some of your past podcasts and things, they don't protect you against those things. And people don't realize that, they like the free stuff. Well, free as free does, you got to pay for it. So
free isn't always free.
No, because in fact, a lot of times, even Apple has its own built-in system. That's one of the nice things about Apple Computer. It does not need a separate antivirus or anti-spyware program. They have it already built in. It's a very nice thing. And Apple does have security updates. One of the nicest things about Apple is their security updates. They don't really tell you what they fixed or what loophole they closed. And that's a good thing because it really keeps the bad guy guessing. If they thought they were halfway in, did Apple just lock them out further? So they're very good at what they do. But there are issues like anything, even early updates. So give an example, Apple's new operating system, OS 10 Big Sur, is a great operating system. It's new and it takes Apple into the next generation where they're merging all the technology from the iPhones and iPads into the computer. So if you have an app that only ran on an iPad, will now run on your computer.
Oh, wow.
And the way that they created their own silicon, so they won't be relying on Intel chips or AMD processors. It's all going to be Apple's M1 chip and moving forward. And it's a whole new way of doing computing. Security's built into the chips, and it's getting to the point where uh, forensics is going to be very difficult for getting people's data back. And if I can say anything today that you should take home, even though we're talking about the pitfalls and trends we're seeing, please do backups. One thing people forget, or they assume they have a backup, please do backups. Whether it's a Macintosh or Windows or Google device, please do backups, because the way these things are designed now with the new solid state drives, if you don't have a backup and it fails, you're not going to get your data back.
Right. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because a lot of times people, they don't think about that. They always think nothing's going to happen to them. And, even if it's not ransomware, like you said, if there's just a glitch in something that happens in your hard drive or something in your operating system, or if you do one of these patch updates and it messes something up. Yeah, I agree. And thank you for bringing that up. An update is crucial. So let's talk a little bit about, how about you give us kind of either 3 or 5 of your top tips about how to protect the devices. So what are some quick, simple, easy little things that people can remember and implement?
Well, simple enough is, do the operating system upgrades and do the system patches as they come out. Now, usually I tell people, like I said before, just wait a little bit. Don't do them right away. I have clients that call and say, oh my God, it came out last night, but you do it right now. I say, wait. But yes, I'd say within 2 weeks, go ahead and apply the patches, unless it's something that came out that we all know is a virus out there and they want everybody to hurry up and patch, and the patch is good, then absolutely apply it when you have the time. But it's not just doing your phone, your tablet, and your computers, whether it's Mac or Windows or Google devices. You have to look at, we have a lot of other technology that get updates too, we forget about. Our TVs now have what we call firmware, where it updates the actual hardware.
Right.
And even the apps that are on your TV, like Hulu and Netflix, which we're all familiar with, they have to be updated to the next version for safety and security. And those devices talk to your network. So they have to have network security. So even if you lock down your network between your phone and your tablet and your computer, your TV might be the open source for a hacker to get into your network or your business network, or your thermostat, or your blender and your toaster and your dishwasher and your microwave and dryer. It goes down the list. I didn't think appliances and refrigerators had to be on networks, and some of them will not let you power them up until you get them connected, create a username and password at these places, and log in. So it's
oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Well, that's the hard part. We joke about passwords. What's the best way to keep track of them? Password managers, write them down. How do we do it? And we can go back and forth all day on that. The funny part is everyone's worried about just their basic devices, a phone, a watch, a tablet, and a computer. No one's thinking about their car, the refrigerator,
yep, you're right,
thermostats, and everything else that we have. Alexa, Google, Apple's, their pod, everything that communicates. The artificial intelligence technology is awesome, but I think what we're doing is we're letting our guard down by adding the simplicities of saying, Alexa, turn on the lights, and it does, and we're amazed. But how open is our network? Is that thing always listening to us? And they are. All the tech, even your phone listens. So don't think for 1 minute they're not. They know where your GPS coordinates are. They know when you're looking at something while you shop. That's why you get coupons in your emails after something you just looked at, or you search a web page reading a news article, and in a corner was that Coleman generator you looked at 2 days ago on Home Depot, and it's floating on the left side of the screen. So there's a lot that's intertwined, but people need to pay attention. That's not just the everyday things we use. It's all the other technology that needs to be updated.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, I love the stories you shared about how you get these emergency calls from clients saying, I can't turn on my lights because the app wasn't working or their network was down. And it's like, well, there's a switch on the wall. You could just flip that. Or the dishwasher, I can't turn my dishwasher on. It's like, well, you just put the dishes in, so push the button. So I agree. I think people are just, they're buying into this convenience factor and this kind of cool tech factor. And I agree. I think it's going to be the demise of us, because we're going to be so dependent. And if something happens, we're all going to be just kind of standing around going, oh my God, what do we do? Because we forget how we do all the basic stuff. So I agree. Yeah. The smart stuff, I think is, I like dumb technology. My car, everything I want is dumb. I don't want any of the smart stuff. But for those of you that do have the smart stuff, yes, definitely take that into consideration with all the updates. So what are a couple other tips that you have for us?
Well, before we move forward, is just write down the technology you do have. Make a list. I have an Alexa.
Oh, great idea.
Write it all down. and maybe the date you put it in, or find out, because you have to interface with these things. And usually an app tells you if it needs updated or not. The problem I see with most technology is it often has to be upgraded too. So if you buy an iPhone every year or every other year kind of thing, I try to do a 3-year thing with iPhones, but it doesn't work for everybody. Well, what about that thermostat? The old Honeywell thermostat with 2 batteries in it stayed on your wall and you forgot about it unless you got hot or cold and you pushed a button.
Like 20 years it was there.
Right. You don't even really walk past it, don't even realize it's there. But now that Nest thermostat, which is cool, when you can from the golf course turn on and off the AC in the house, that's great. The problem is that will have an end of life sooner than the old Honeywells, because they have to be updated. And then when there's no more security patches because it's an old product, now you have to go out and spend another $300 on another thermostat, and then that toaster, and then a dishwasher. And then these are just more problems to occur. Unfortunately, technology is now being built into everything we do, so they say for our
Right.
and the conveniences are kind of cool. And trust me, it is really cool. It's fun. But at the end of the day, like we talk, it's more problems to go wrong. We don't realize how intertwined everything really is these days. So I do say, please write things down and try to keep things up to date. That's really important. Some of the big things I want people to, I mentioned before, if you get a text on your phone, you get a phone call, and this is, I can't tell you how many times this happens, that Apple Computer is calling you, or Microsoft or Google. I've had a lady where she looked at an email and it said that she bought something in I think it's rubles, whatever they use in India, and it was a lot of money. And she goes, "Why didn't do that?" Well, she called the number on it thinking it was Amazon, and they told her she had to get in the computer to fix the problem, and she let them in. Now she realized later, after the gentleman asked her to leave the room because of the radiation on the screen, and then she thought, she went and had coffee with Shake and realized, oh my gosh, that's preposterous. Went back in, kicked the guy out of the computer, and called us. I said, but the problem is, at what point do we start trusting people on the phone? And just because they say they're Comcast or they say they're Apple, why do we let them in? And and listen, we all have issues with our tech. It happens. That's why I have a job and you have a job.
Right.
But the issue is we shouldn't be listening to people at random calling us on the phone. Sometimes it's coincidental, but most of the time it's all unsolicited support, and they're just trying to gain access to your stuff and your identity and your money, and that's what happens. So please don't, if you see a text that looks untoward, throw it away. If you see an email that doesn't make any sense, throw it away. Or if you're really concerned or it looks legit, as you've seen, some of these are really hard to decipher fact from fiction, call that 800 number on the back of your credit card if it's American Express asking you to do something, and find out directly from them, not by following that email. And the pop-ups, they're always going to happen. People will think they have the best software in their computers, whether it's Apple, or Windows. Just surfing a web page, reading an article, things will pop up and they won't go away. They'll do a siren sound. They have this audio warning, say you've been infected. They show these graphs and bars, and people go, well, gee, I couldn't get it to go away, so I called the 800 number and the guy fixed it. Well, yeah, they turned that stuff on the computer, and really all you do is quit the web browser, restart the computer, and it would have been gone. Simple as that.
Right.
But unfortunately, it becomes that 3-hour deal that they've got inside and then started the process of identity theft. So I just want people to understand, please do not respond to text, emails, phone calls, or pop-ups. Like you always say, take a pause, get a grip, figure out what's happening, and then just step away from the device if you're scared. Or call somebody like me, any computer technician. I said, call someone like you as a specialist. This is what people need to do. And actually, sometimes just restarting the computer solves the problem. And this stuff does go away. But I don't know why, for some reason, we've all let our guards down and we're believing everything that we hear and see. And it's getting worse.
Dennis, let me ask you real quick. For those people who might have fallen for the IT support scam and they did allow someone access to their computer, one thing I'm finding is that when I talk to people afterwards, they always say, oh, well, I hired a technician. They came out and they ran a scan and there are no viruses on my computer.
Well,
should they be looking for viruses, or is there something else that they should be looking for?
Yeah, they're not. So when it comes to the unsolicited support, the first virus that's what they got tricked into having them come into the computer. It's just a bunch of smoke and mirrors, and they did with dog and pony show. So once a person's in the computer, they put this little display up saying, "Oh, we detected you had 1,300 bugs, you had this virus, and we're getting it out." And now the whole thing is winning the trust over. Like, man, you guys are great. Glad I called you. Here's the $300. I'll see you next month, kind of thing. And now you're paying for something you never really had a problem with. What I worry about is not the virus or spyware, it's the leaving the door open, because once they gain access to your computer by letting them in, It's programs like you've heard LogMeIn, GoToMeeting, WebEx, TeamViewer. There's a whole bunch out there. Microsoft Remote Desktop. There's a whole bunch out there. And what happens is these guys will install multiple just to have different ways to get in. And the way it works is it talks to their console wherever they're located. And it's usually in another country. So if you turn your computer off, next time you turn it back on, it signals whoever the next person is on a desk when that number pops up that this computer came live. They actually gain access back into your system. Now, what does that mean when they have access? Well, now they're looking through all your folders. They're looking at pictures. They're looking at documents, looking at web browsers, because most people, as you know, like to keep all their passwords in for their accounts.
Unfortunately.
Yep, and they're easy access. Most people don't have passwords on their computers. And even then, if you've already let the person in, they know the password. And worse yet, we've seen they actually gain access. They change the password. So now when you go to pull the plug and they turn it back on, you can't get into the computer.
Right.
So,
yeah.
but they can. So, and a lot of people, they just think by walking away from it that the bad guy won't come in. Or that happened on Friday. I hung up the phone. Well, Monday I turn the computer back on. The guy comes back. So I do think the technicians who do go out and look at your devices need to look for all the software to keep stores open, like the ones I mentioned.
Is it called like remote access software? Is that kind of a term that they could use?
Okay. Yep, absolutely, because it's just allowing support from someone else to come in from the outside.
So if you've clicked on one of these, or you think somebody's gotten your computer, and you hire an IT person, somebody like Dennis or someone else, depending on where you live, make sure they don't just do a virus scan. Make sure that they're also looking for any remote access software or any software that was installed around that time frame. Because I want to make sure we point that out, because people always tell me, oh yeah, well, I ran an antivirus scan, and then 6 months later, they're still having issues. And it's because the bad guy's been in their computer for a whole 6 months. So I'm glad you brought that up. And did you have any more tips that you wanted to share?
Well, one thing I will tell you with Apple, at least right now, Microsoft, if there is an update for the Windows 10, you should do it. For Apple's Big Sur, if you have an older computer, even some of the newer computers, or if you're low on disk space, I'm going to say that one more time. If you are low on disk space, it means your hard drive storage, do not upgrade to Big Sur. It's been a big problem. Like I said, this is Apple's big change because they're switching to the new processors. This is their 20-year cycle where they change into a whole new operating system, like it's going forwards. It's pretty impressive. The problem is even some of the newest computers weren't ready for it. So one of the biggest problems that people don't understand, normally I say just update the operating system, you're fine, we'll deal with the patches and updates later. The problem with this one is someone at Apple thought it was a great idea to actually do the BIOS or the firmware hardware updates at the same time you're doing the operating system update. Now, everybody knows you never do that. Microsoft, everyone knows you don't do hardware and software at the same time. Someone thought, hey, one updater will do everything. Well, what happens is the operating system is being updated at the same time computer chips are being updated. But if the computer chip or whatever circuits are being reprogrammed fail or don't complete, you end up with a brick. It never turns back on. Wow. Not even a dead computer. And there were a lot of those. And they were saying how it happened to certain years of MacBook Pros to maybe a Mac Mini to certain iMacs. I've seen it from new computers a year old to ones that are allowed to have it back, I guess, 6-7 years old. So we've seen lots of weird issues, and I've gotten around a few, and I have a couple that end up as bricks and never to be used again. But please, if you have your iPhone and an important, Apple wants you to have two-factor authentication. You have use your face identity, but you also have a PIN number. Please do not lose your PIN number because the security is built into the devices. Not Apple. Apple doesn't have access to that stuff. It's built into the device. So if you forget your password and cannot get into your device, you're not going to get back into it ever again. So it keeps it from being pawned off at a pawn shop, which is nice. The problem is I have people who own their devices under a drunk stupor, had a bad night, had a bad medical conditions happen to a lot of folks that they didn't realize they changed something or their brain's not working like it should, and they can't remember even a simple 1, 2, 3, 4 password and can't get into their stuff. So please write these things down. I mean, it's nice to have a password manager, it's digital, but if the computer's broken, you don't have access, or do both, but I do think write them down, keep them in a safe place, safe deposit box, a home safe, a trusted family member, hopefully your spouse, but also even people have their own attorneys and CPAs, people they trust and do business with, or your attorney, just make sure that they have a copy because at some point, someone else is going to have to gain access to your stuff.
And underneath the keyboard is not a secure place, right? Because that's where we see a lot of passwords.
More than I want to share it. That's how sad it is. Or post it around the
Yes,
whole.
yes. But yeah, my favorite is going to a house and then they can't remember their password ever. So I just lift up the keyboard, flip it over. I'm like, there it is. They're like, how did you know that? Like you and 99% of your closest friends all do the same thing.
Funny part is I get the most businesses and everyone in the office knows everybody's password. Something, why is it all password protected?
I mean, what's the point?
Everybody knows everybody else's stuff. So kind of
Oh
funny.
my gosh. That's just crazy. Well, Dennis, I really appreciate you taking the time and coming and talking with us. Because I know you and I, we kind of commiserate and share a bunch of the stories of what's happened with some of our victims, so we can keep each other up to date. And I just thought it would be important for people to hear it from your perspective, from someone who's actually working in the field, trying to repair and recover for people after something has happened. So really appreciate you coming on here. And in the show notes, we'll have additional information. We'll have a couple of the tips and everything in there. And Dennis, we're going to have you back another time because I'm sure this stuff is going to keep changing and there's going to be new updates. So we'd love to have you back again.
Have me here.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
I'll give a couple extra pointers to help people out with some different things with the upcoming technology. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you all for joining us here today. And we hope to have you back again next week where we'll have great information to help protect yourself from identity theft, fraud, and cyber threats. So until then, stay safe.